Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Statistics, the only podcast that focuses on wrestling through the unique lens of statistics and analytics. Today I am your host, Craig from ProWrestlingMusings.com, and I am a man who can say statistics properly, not like the two Americans that you had last week who both seemed to say statistics. Anyway, joining me today is Hit the Books and Wrestling with Statistics' very own Ryan Neitzey. Ryan, how are you doing after that accent assassination?
Well, I feel like automatically I'm aghast. I am dumbfounded by this assault of words or lack thereof pronunciations of words that's coming from you. The vitriol that's coming this way, Craig, all the way. You're mailing it in from Scotland to Georgia and all this. Did I not say it correctly last week?
It's well, I've often noticed it with you, but then when you had a fellow American on last week, he was also saying statistics without, just I don't know, just kind of pushing forward the America's constant kind of wrecking of the English language, not only through kind of taking words with rich kind of linguistic histories and turning them and being like, oh, but that's a little bit too complicated. Let's replace it with sidewalk or, these kind of things. Camper van.
I think you just summarized like America in general, not just our linguistics in general. Like, I feel like you were just like, yeah, America just sort of takes what it wants, changes it however it feels like it, and just sort of abuses it in general. I think you just described America. Statistics. I'm trying to think of how I say
fair.
it.
That's fair.
Well, now I got the thing in my head where I'm thinking about me saying it, and I'm trying to say it without your influence. You know what I mean? So I'm in a whole boot. But besides my lack of pronunciation, I'm doing fairly fine. It's been a while since we've done a show together on this show.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad we're back. It's not going to hold up forever. I'm going to be gone next week, but at least we get one in.
Yeah, and I have to say, well, I'm quite pleased with myself kind of growing up as a person, as in that I listened to the podcast last week and was just like really, really quite pleased at how good it was and like quite impressed with how good it was. It wasn't the kind of insecure thing of like, darn these guys, they're making me look bad type things. Like, oh, this is really good. That's great.
It's a great way to obviously you're providing the data and stuff, but it's a great way for, I imagine, for you and for me when I'm going to be gone next week and when I was gone a couple weeks ago. It's a great way to step outside of yourself in the show and sort of like from a third party perspective, look at it, and be like, well, what is this good? I feel like we do a great show. I really enjoy what we put on. And thank you for the compliment about last week as well. But yeah, I really like the show a lot, and I'm so excited we get to do it again.
So when we've had other people on, when Mags was on, and then when Rob was on, and you even did a little bit of it last week with Mikey, kind of treating him as the guest. So I thought we'd kind of flip it on its head. So Ryan, I'm going to treat you like you're kind of just the kind of the new person on. So I'd like to. So we've kind of spoken a little bit about how I'm a teacher because you're polite and stuff, and do the kind of polite person questioning thing, which I'm going to try out here rather than just kind of setting myself up for opportunities to talk at length. So Ryan, you say you work in film. What does that mean? Is that the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, or are you kind of just like following people around on the street trying to discover funny moments to send into a kind of You've Been Framed style TV program?
Ultimately it's whatever I get hired to do. Honestly, I've only been technically in the film business for 2 years now. I graduated college, got a degree in film. I think my degree is technically film and moving image, BS My fun fact, I got a BS in film. You would think it would be a BA. Oh, do you know what BS is in BA? I don't know if it's different in Europe.
BA is so I have a BEd, which is Bachelor of Education.
It's Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in filmmaking.
So film is science, not arts.
And my school, correct. I think the argument is my school teaches you more about like the job of being on a film, where other schools will teach you like, you know, what does it mean to create art of film. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the difference. But yeah, I got my degree in filmmaking. In fact, I got my concentration in producing. But, you know, entering the film sphere, obviously it's all about connections. So basically what I just do every time when I'm on set, I try to get hired. And when I'm usually the entry level position is a production assistant, a PA. So basically I'm the guy that goes around and asks everyone if they need a bottled water, and I give it to them. But, you know, it's entry level. Besides that, you know, I've worked on a bunch of shows. I've worked on shows that have aired on ABC, aired on NBC, you know, the Titan Games, that's hosted by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Yeah.
Well, I've seen that.
Yeah. Great TV show.
So when you say you've worked on these shows, what is the experience of that? Are you meeting the kind of, like, the obvious question from an outsider is are you meeting the kind of people that we're going to, you know, are you meeting people whose names we will know type thing?
That's a great question. Let's say, for example, for Titan Games, I was a script PA, which was basically my job was I had a TV monitor in front of me that had live feeds from 16 cameras, and I had to watch 2 of those cameras for the pre and post interviews. So basically, whenever a contestant got interviewed, I would write down exactly what they're saying. Okay. I did, in fact, meet Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, because at one point I was in a room where we were doing his pre-interview, like his intro interview into the show. And so I was able to meet him and shake his hand and whatnot. When you're in those sort of...
Did you manage that and kind of maintain, like...
composure?
No, like all of your bones?
Yeah, he didn't rip my skeleton out from my handshake, which is very thankful, because, you know, health insurance and whatnot. But I was very thankful for Dwayne to, you know, withhold his power there. But yeah, I mean, like in most jobs at the entry level position, you're not really meeting the big celebrities, because they're always like, you know, for instance, Titan Games, The Rock was at his spot. Then when it was his time to go on camera, he would drive over to set, walk on stage, do the bit, then he would leave. Okay. And so you rarely see him. In fact, we were actually told that we can't stop him and take pictures with him and take selfies with him, because Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's too nice of a person that he will take the photo. And if he's taking everyone's photo, then we're not going to get anything done. And that's like another thing that I have in my brain, is that when I'm on set, you know, I talk about composure. When I'm on set, I've seen The Rock, right? I mean, that's insane. I saw Adam Scott, who was on ABC's Don't game show. I've seen other people that are quite famous. And when I'm on set, I like the work blinders go on, where it's just like, oh, they're normal people. I have a job to do. Because ultimately, the people I'm trying to impress are the producers and other behind the scenes people. And I'm trying to get under their good graces so that I can ensure that I get another job down the line, because this is a whole gig economy where it's all about the next job and next job, next job.
And I'm sure that would be...
Go ahead. No, I was going to say slowly that obviously that has all been halted because of the pandemic.
And I'm sure that'll be like a trip up that a lot of people in your position would fall into, like getting distracted or overawed by the kind of the names, to distill it perhaps a little bit too much. They're kind of just being distracted by trying to get a photo or whatever.
I mean, yeah, I 100% would have loved to have a photo of Dwayne The Rock Johnson. But when, at least, and then obviously I'm speaking on my behalf, but for me, I understand, and also it's like when you see him in person, you're like, oh, this is a person. And like, I understand that, like,
Yeah.
I am, in a weird way, when you're on like a production set, you're sort of like one of the cogs in the wheels. And if you're distracting the main host, and also I think The Rock is an executive producer on the show, so if you're distracting a producer from doing his job, then we're halting the whole production. So it's like, I can't, part of my job is I can't fraternize with the celebrities, or the whole show gets pushed back, which means more money and overtime that has to be paid, which means I might not get hired back. So basically, it's
Sure.
like it's people that. So a lot of people might be like, "Oh God, it's The Rock," but to ensure that you go on to the next job, which is what this whole thing is about, you have to put all of that aside, which is very frustrating when, again, you're meeting Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Yeah, very, very, very. Right, very quickly, this just so we can move on to the actual statistics. Favorite wrestling match, which I'm sure you'll know.
Favorite wrestling match. I love that you bring this up because we're talking about favorites and stuff. I've talked about in the past how I've created a document for myself that creates tells me who my favorite wrestler is based off of previous matches. So of all of 2020, I can like look through and say what is my favorite match of 2020. And obviously, like, I've only been doing this system for a bit, so I haven't my entire history of watching wrestling. So I'm trying to think of it all. Let me pull up my document here in front of me to give me highlights. Another reason why I do all these things, Greg, is that I have a terrible memory system. So I'm trying to remember like what matches I really enjoyed. That's part of the issue. I really, in terms of 2020, I mean, according to this, one of my favorite matches that I can distinctly remember is, what was it? I think it was the Ibushi Okada match from this past Wrestle Kingdom. I don't know if it's necessarily my favorite match of all time, but that match, right off the bat is one of my favorites. And I just think that match was just great. And obviously going into Naito right after that, that match is pure storytelling, where the match previous of Ibushi was pure, technical wrestling skill, which is something I guess I've noticed that I prefer more, is like more of the wrestling than the story aspect sometimes. Favorite match. It's not necessarily my favorite technical match, because that one I really have to like dive deep and think about. But one of my favorite matches that I can think of when like being excited for and seeing this, seeing the story built up of over years, and seeing it all take place, was the first, I believe, I think it was the WrestleMania 25 of Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. The one where, Shawn Michaels comes out dressed like a white angel with the full Undertaker get up in all white. And, the dead man does that insane suicide dive over the top rope and basically lands on a cameraman who I believe was actually Sean Spears. Fun fact.
Oh, really?
I believe that's true. And basically landed his neck. I remember being so excited for that match because they've been sort of teasing it for years, a singles match between Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. And then when they finally get to it, it's the twilight years of Shawn Michaels' career. It's not necessarily yet the twilight years of Undertaker, even though he's in the business, I think, for a little bit longer, but he could still go at the time. So I remember distinctly remembering that match. And of course, his other matches, I remember Batista Undertaker. One of my favorite matches I think about all the time is Rey Mysterio versus Great Khali. Obviously, these are all WWE things. Obviously, I love New Japan and other matches as well. But these are the things that when it comes to, I guess, favoritism, these are the things, the moments that stick out in my brain. A Rey Mysterio Great Khali, I should say. I believe that was that was one of the first SmackDown matches I've ever seen in my life. And I was a fan of Rey Mysterio. It was like him coming back, I think, from his Chavo Guerrero feud from his knee injury. And they're hyping up Great Khali. And the whole premise of the match is obviously big man versus small man. But they were hyping up the finisher of Great Khali, which was the vice grip. And so what they did was that Great Khali gets the vice grip on Rey Mysterio. And because Rey Mysterio is so small, they're giving off the impression that Great Khali is squeezing Rey Mysterio's head, which, because Rey Mysterio's head is so small or whatever, it's crushing his head, and like spurts of blood pops from Rey Mysterio's mouth. And I remember as a young child watching wrestling for the first time, and being a fan of Rey Mysterio, I was terrified. I was like, this monster is just damaging this hero of mine. And now I think about that. Now I compare that to Rey Mysterio also doing a thing where he gets his eye gouged. Rey Mysterio's gone through a lot of things in his career. Now that I think about it. Oh man. But yeah, that wasn't really a good answer, Craig. But that's the answer I got for you.
It's different is good. Okay, so we're going to kind of move along into the main body of the show.
Yeah.
And we're going to start off by looking at something that keeps like coming up for me when I'm looking at these kind of statistics and comparing wrestlers to each other. We're going to have a look at the impact that time has, like the length of match, the amount of time that a wrestler has wrestled has on the kind of the amount of offense that they're getting in, their rate of offense.
Okay.
So in the show notes and in the video version, you should be able to find, or you'll be presented with the relationship between ring time and offense per hour kind of rate. And the reason it's offense per hour instead of per match is because obviously matches differ in length. So it's supposed to kind of flatten things out. However, what I kept feeling when I was putting these things together was that shorter matches tended towards wrestlers having a faster per hour offense rate, and longer matches reduced it, because in longer matches, wrestlers are selling for longer. So, they're on the ground. The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels one is actually a really good example, because I think after that dive out of the ring where he like lands on his neck, there's a lot of kind of them going down after big moves, and I think the Undertaker is just resting essentially.
I mean, that was an awful dive, an awful catch by Sean Spears or whoever it was. So he was probably knocked loopy for a second.
Yes, absolutely. So, and the graph does kind of show that it's not to the extent that I thought it would. But we do have a negative correlation between the length of ring time and offense rate per hour. So it is showing that the longer a wrestler is in the ring, the less likely they are of having a particularly fast offense rate per hour, because it will be those times where they're lying on the ground to sell a big move after like being in the ring for such a long time. It is obviously kind of almost harming these numbers, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
What's your kind of what kind of springs to mind upon being presented with this kind of data, Ryan?
Well, the data sort of correctly agrees with that theory, right? Of, if you have a short match, if you have, obviously in AEW, when we say a short match, they do have time limits on these matches for the most part. So, if you have a 15-minute match and wins matter and you want to get more wins, and you're, let's say, Darby Allin, you want to get a win, and you want to go out there and sprint and try to make sure you give in as much offense as you can to hopefully get the win there. Maybe Darby's not the greatest example because of how Darby sort of wrestles, but the idea is still the same, that, you know, if you have a long sprint of a 15-minute match, then you're going to want to get there and, you know, sprint it up, get as much offense. If you're someone that is in there for 30 minutes, you're in a title match. If you're in the rare 60-minute or whatever, then you're, you know, for the most part, you're going that length. I mean, I can't even remember, even like New Japan history, I can't really remember many matches where it's like a 60-minute time limit and they only go for 10. You know what I mean? I can't exactly remember things like that. And part of that, obviously, you know, coming out of kayfabe is the idea of like, hey, if this is a world title match, you want to make it meaningful, you want to make it last and important for the audience, and that just draws out the drama a little bit. But when it comes to the numbers here, yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. There's some ones I pick up on, like those sort of outliers to the right of the graph with Cody Rhodes and Moxley, who are constant outliers here. Cody Rhodes, obviously, and Moxley getting way more ring time than anybody else in this entire promotion. And
yeah, quite significantly in the case of Cody.
And they're maybe in the maybe latter half of offense per hour. Obviously, yeah, that, you know, they have a lot more ring time, but they're not going out there. And even if some matches obviously are sprints for Cody and Moxley, I don't know if there's what the time limit is on TNT title matches. If there is one, I presume there is one.
I think it's 20 minutes. I think they said, kind of whilst establishing the challenge, that this title would have a 20-minute time limit, and that would be standardized. I don't think I've just made that up.
I mean, I believe you. Even if it's 20 minutes, it could be 15 or 20 minutes, because even then, Cody, a lot of those matches have been like 10, 11, 12 minutes.
Yeah, they're kind of, from writing down the times at the end of them, they seem to come in at like 10 to 14 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, he's not really selling a lot, or however you look at that, I guess. But yeah, I mean, a lot of those people are not Cody Rhodes, Moxley, Guevara. I mean, Darby is, you know, a weird one there, but a lot of those people, they have high ring times, but they're still like middle of the pack, bottom half of the pack. Who do we got that's very far back? I mean, there's also the idea of like comparing to like Cody to Adam Page. It was 8 minutes of ring time, which I probably will guess is just one match in 2020.
Yeah, he had his first one-on-one match last week, as it happens.
Really? Oh yeah, because he was against 5. He was against Alan Angels. Yeah, I mean, my big takeaway here is that I think it makes sense. You know, the less ring time you're in, or, you know, within the time limit as well, the more offense you're going to try to put in. You want to ensure victories. I mean, that's what the whole idea of wins mattering comes from, right? Is that you want to get the win, because if you get a win here, then you're probably going to get a title match down the line. I mean, obviously there's, again, some Darby-ness happening in the past week, but Darby came back from injury, you know, won his feud with Brian Cage. So he gets a title shot, I guess. Maybe that's not the greatest example. But yeah, I think it makes sense. The less ring time you have, the more offense you put in. I think that makes sense to me, at the very least. What do you think, Craig?
So in terms of like out with kayfabe, it makes sense that you can't have a 5-minute match and then people like lying down for 20 seconds after a move. It's certainly, I mean, unless it's like Wardlow with that big knee thing, that you're kind of selling a finisher, but like, you know, first strike battle in the match and then they're on the ground for ages. It kind of spoils the magic of wrestling. People aren't being worn down, and that kind of idea. In terms of like going out with kayfabe, if it's like I'm getting tangled around my words. Within kayfabe, oh dear. So out with kayfabe, then you are, if it's a 5-minute match and people are spending ages on the ground, it's not the best use of time. It's not making a huge amount of sense in terms of keeping the audience engaged. There's no point of like it's fine in New Japan when nothing happens in the first 5 minutes, but there's just not the kind of luxury of that kind of time in AEW, if certainly, or television in general, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, they are doing a TV show, a 2-hour TV show that runs at like what, cutting out commercials, an hour 40 or something. Whereas New Japan, they have time limits as well, but their shows run 2 hours straight. Obviously there's not really commercial breaks or anything. I guess they do have intermissions recently, but yeah, it's they don't have time for AEW to like sit in a match. It's more of like, we got to keep it moving to make sure we hit the next thing or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I think this chart does ultimately show is that the people that are ending up in these longer pay-per-view matches the kind of the offense per hour rate does kind of fall down there, because a really good example was Kenny Omega had a match against Pac, 30-minute Iron Man match, and there were other guys around about that time that had around 30 minutes of kind of ring time, but none of them had been in kind of long matches, which made Kenny Omega's kind of offense per hour rate look quite slow. And I think that's kind of where these statistics are that's something that needs to be kept in mind, but it does also really highlight the difference between these two match types in terms of how the wrestling company is using their time, and when they have the luxury of spreading it out, and when they can't do that.
I would be really intrigued in seeing ring time per match, like average ring time per match compared to this.
It could go alongside this chart. That would certainly add layers.
Yeah, because I wonder, because obviously, like you said, like if someone has Kenny Omega and he has, he tends to have, or just, look at Moxley. Moxley is someone that, because he's the world champion, tends to have longer matches this year, as opposed to someone who is Wardlow, who's had maybe 8 matches for a total of 11 minutes total ring time. Like, I wonder if there is what the correlation would be in there. Because the idea would be then it would probably actually be the same. If
in
anything.
Theory, yes. If what I'm describing is accurate, then yes.
Yeah, I think that would make sense.
If not, we'll never speak of it again.
If not, this has been cut out of the podcast.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with anything.
And on that note, we're going to have a quick look at Warhorse versus Cody, because it was kind of the most noteworthy of the matches from this last week of Dynamite. And Brian, I'm just going to kind of chuck you on the spot here. Do you want to take a little run through these statistics?
Yes, I can, Craig. And we should say, we are also recording this on Friday. So I know there's also, I think there's more New Japan happening over the weekend before this episode comes out on Monday. So if anything big happened, obviously, I think earlier today of time of recording, Craig, there was the Suzuki Nagata match,
right?
That we didn't get a chance to watch. But yeah, if that, we'll see how those turn out as well. But for at least in Wednesday night, Cody Rhodes versus Warhorse, very interesting match. Obviously, Warhorse coming from the independent scene, your internet champion. That was later in the match. Your independent wrestling champion, Warhorse, arriving on the scene of TNT. Warhorse pretty much dominates Cody Rhodes when it comes to strikes, with 25-8. Warhorse has like 3 strikedowns versus Cody Rhodes 2, so fairly even. Warhorse does also have, that strike down rate is 12% versus Cody Rhodes is 25%, so not great. Warhorse doesn't have a lot of meat behind those horse bones. Well, Cody obviously has a lot more. Grapples, Cody Rhodes 4 versus 1, won that one. Warhorse made sure he was on top of him all the time when Cody Rhodes jumped out of the ring by diving twice, while Cody did not get anything. And we tried to warn Warhorse about this on the internet. We tried tweeting at him before the show happened, But, Cody Rhodes was able to get 49 seconds of submission on Warhorse versus Warhorse's 37. We tried warning him, Craig. Watch out for. There's been a trend in the past several of these TNT Championship matches with Cody Rhodes getting a lot of submission time in on his opponents. He's really been working people's legs, and so that's something we try to warn him. And the same thing happened here. He did try, Craig, to reverse out of it a lot. it shows here 16 reversals out of Warhorse versus Cody Rhodes 15. He is getting the win there. There were several moments in the match where, for instance, Warhorse was getting the figure 4 leg lock put on him, but right before Cody can put the leg down, Warhorse flips him immediately. And then later in the match, he stops the leg and tries to hurt the leg. Warhorse saw it coming and tried to fix it, but he ultimately got lost in that endeavor. Warhorse went for more pin attempts, 4-3. Cody Rhodes fouled once. Only one foul, but it is sort of going into that line of maybe a heel turn. 3 taunts from Cody versus Warhorse's 8. Obviously, that's not much of a surprise, seeing that he's from the independent scene. We know you got to sell those tickets, got to sell that merch. You want to be taunting. There
was a lot of the kind of head banging.
Yeah, he's a headbanger. What can he blame for? And Cody Rhodes getting the one finisher on Warhorse to finish the match. Cody Rhodes match offense 39% versus Warhorse's 61%. I think that's the largest difference in these TNT matches.
Off the top of my head, I would certainly guess so. Yeah,
I can double check that for us, but I think that's the largest differential match offense. Which, we talk out of kayfabe. Cody gave Warhorse quite the shine here, which I hopefully appeals to all the internet fans. We already talked about strike down rate, reversal rate. Like I said, Warhorse had 49% reversal rate versus Cody's 33%. So like we said, Warhorse came in seemingly prepared, but ultimately failed, which is sort of upsetting. But, I think he put up quite the fight. We can look at, should I go into flow of offense, or do you have any points to talk about when it comes to these stats?
I'm going to very quickly take flow of offense so when we look at the flow of offense chart, what's really interesting there is the sheer lack of Cody.
Yes.
Cody Rhodes before the break. So they're trying to get people interested in this match before they cut to break. And, they do the picture in picture, but they that's slightly more risky. People, that might be the time that people duck out. Before the break, Cody Rhodes had attempted 3 submissions, not big submissions, 2 9-second submissions and a 3-second submission, and he hit a takedown type grapple. That was it. That was all he hit before break. Warhorse, in contrast, 6 strikes, a grapple, and 2 submissions, one of 10 seconds and one of 20. So there's a lot of reversing before the break, but it was very, very much set up as Warhorse. And then during the break, Cody hits 7 strikes, one of which is a strike down, 2 grapples, one of which is an avalanche from the top type grapple. After the break, Cody hits 1 more grapple, a strike down, 20-second submission, and then his finishing 8-second figure 4. After the break, Warhorse hits loads of strikes. There's got to be 15, 18 in there, 2 dives, and a short submission of his own, along with a couple pin attempts. Cody almost didn't Cody, if we subtracted everything that happened in the break from this match, that 39% of the match offense that Cody got would be so much lower.
Yeah.
Cody barely got anything in this match out with what happened in the break. It was minimal, absolutely minimal. And people are on the internet trying to say that this man is just burying the lower down AEW stars and independent wrestlers left, right, and center, which is, I don't know, I get the thinking that might take you there, but for me, this match is just the absolute opposite. Somebody I saw on Reddit was saying, why would Warhorse turn up just to get beat by Cody like this? Well, he was on national TV. He got 60. Excuse me.
I'm just counting off. 1.
All right. Yeah. Yes. 1. Got 61% of the offense.
2.
His opponent barely gave him any offense on like full screen television.
3.
And yet presumably he gets paid.
4. And the big 4, the big number right there. Yeah, he gets paid for it.
I mean, number 5 is like he's making connections. He might eventually get signed. It doesn't seem like at the moment, but his name's there. He's spoken to people. He's very much in the thinking. So, like, to say that Warhorse should never turn up for Cody to bury him, I think here is when statistics can hold up a flag and be like, well, actually, no, X, Y, and Z happened. It's very, very interesting numbers.
I 100% agree with that. Is that I think it also sort of proves to me, especially if before the break, Cody Rhodes barely getting any offense in. I think that sort of to me tells the story, taking the story from the numbers, that Cody Rhodes was not taking Warhorse seriously. I would argue. I mean, he was on Twitter. He was even saying stuff like that about like, will he even last 5 minutes with me? Where in this match, it's 10 minutes, 31 seconds. Cody Rhodes gets nothing in. Warhorse just basically dominates the majority of the match. You have 2/3 of the match, basically, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Cody Rhodes did not. He 100% underestimated Warhorse here. And one could argue, and maybe that goes into that strike down rate percentage, but one could argue if Warhorse, he's early in his career still in Warhorse. I don't know how long Jake Parnell, the man behind the mask, the man behind the paint, has been wrestling, but he's still coming. This is the most. He's 27 years old. He has been wrestling since 2013. So he's only been wrestling for 7 years. So he still has ways to grow in his career. And, this is from someone that like, hey, who knows if, next week, if they wrestled again, Cody Rhodes might dominate him a little bit more. But next time, Warhorse, let's say a couple years from now, Warhorse puts on a little bit more meat on that horse body of his. If he, gets more training under his belt, Cody Rhodes obviously has been, the blue blood basically of this promotion and training from all of the legends. Warhorse is someone that like, based on this match, I think that not only did Cody underestimate him, but Warhorse took pure advantage of that underestimation and did all his best. And ultimately what caused him to lose was that Cody was like, okay, enough is enough. I need to take you seriously as a reputable contender and try to put you away now. Because if I don't focus, I'm going to lose this match. And I think that I feel like there was a moment where Arn basically said something similar to Cody.
And there's a bit early on where Cody is doing push-ups and Arn loses it.
There we go. I mean, why are you doing push-ups, buddy? He is killing your butt. He's kicking your ass. There we go.
And on that note, I've just very quickly fired some numbers through a calculator. So Cody Rhodes hit 8 moves during this match out with break. During the break, he hit 14. So that means that, and if we then eliminate Cody's during commercial moves hit and Warhorse's during commercial moves hit, Cody Rhodes would have had 20% of the match offense. That's it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's it's really interesting. And I don't know if that's on purpose. I have no idea how matches are laid out. I'm guessing.
I would have to think it's on purpose, right?
Well, yeah, but probably not to that extreme.
Fair.
Fair. I think in Cody's head, it's probably like a 60-40 type situation. And in the end it was, but I think even he perhaps doesn't, I don't know. He maybe, but I suppose with the picture-in-picture, you can see it. So yeah, he's perhaps gone, and well, my bit will be during the break, and then you get to do this, and you get to do that. So yeah, actually, you're right. It will be, but yeah, it's just, there was an interesting bit on, I think it was the Grapple podcast. comparing Jericho with Triple H and how Triple H only works with The Undertaker and whoever, Batista, all these names, and he's like the same age as Chris Jericho, whereas Chris Jericho is giving stuff to Cassidy and to Jungle Boy, and Cody's right there doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And like it is a good look, and it is a hook to get people interested in their TV to be doing this challenge. You know, seeing Warhorse coming in is fascinating. But at the end of the day, I don't believe Warhorse is signing with this promotion now. Probably not in the next 3 years would be my guess.
Agreed.
You know, Warhorse is getting a huge amount out of this, and that does go to Cody's credit and to AEW's credit. They like WWE won't even admit that there is wrestling outside of WWE, and then here we have Cody and AEW doing almost the exact opposite. And I'm not saying they're not benefiting from it; they are, but they are benefiting, giving back as well.
And Warhorse gets the rub. He gets the rub of being on national TV. People know who he is. People might see him and be like, "Oh, that guy's cool. I want to see more of his stuff." And then you log on to YouTube, you type in Warhorse full match or whatever, and there is a large plethora of Warhorse matches. On the episode that came out last Friday for Hit the Books, the Mikey during the show realized that he quickly was logging into independentwrestling.tv, and he was like, "Oh, there's an article on the front page that's like, oh, Warhorse, watch all of Warhorse's titles defenses for free. You can go right now to independentwrestling.tv, not a promotion, but you can go there right now and watch all of Warhorse's matches that he's had to defend his internet or independent wrestling championship." We don't have the data of that. Obviously, I don't know if it's going to be published anytime soon, but I imagine since Warhorse's arrival and also announcement, I guess, of being on AEW, the traffic on independentwrestling.tv has probably gone up.
We're gonna move on from Warhorse versus Cody, and I'd just like to take a very quick look at the kind of the AEW League table rankings that I've been collating, and this is
which he's been doing at prowrestlingmusings.com, which you can check out currently. I guess at any time, not currently. You just check it out at any moment.
Yes, and I've been getting better at keeping this chart up to date. It's being done weekly, usually before the end of Friday. So yeah, it should update. And if it doesn't, if it doesn't, and you're really eager to see what last week's Dynamite has done to these numbers, if you were to message me on Twitter, I'd be delighted that somebody was actually looking at it, and probably do it pronto. So there you go. So yeah, this is in relation to AEW's suggestion that they are a sports-centric company and the idea of rankings and wins and losses mattering. As soon as you say that to me, a British football fan, I'm like, ooh, it's going to be like league tables. And ultimately, it's probably not, but this is an interesting resource, and it certainly does highlight how strongly certain people are being booked and how strongly certain people are not being booked. If you go to the website, you can see all 139 people that have appeared on AEW this year across 6 divisions that I split them up into: overall, male overall, female overall, male singles, female singles, and male tag. But Ryan and I are just going to be looking at the top 25 from overall, the 2 singles divisions, and the tag just now. So overall, we have... I'm just going to fire through maybe the top 10. So it kind of goes Omega, Moxley, Cody, Shida, Paige, Archer, MJF, Rose, Nick Jackson, Stu Grayson. And you'll be able to see this on the PW Musings Twitter page for if you're walking around whilst listening to this, or the website if you want to look for the full thing.
Or if you're watching this on YouTube, which you can every week when this episode comes out on YouTube, Hit the Books Podcast on YouTube.
Ryan, overall league standings, what jumps out for you? Who's not there? Who is there? Etc. Etc.
Thinking it over, obviously there's the people at the bottom of that 9 and 10, Nick Jackson, Stu Grayson. Obviously they're broken up because of this is overall. Yes. It's interesting that they are there. Stu Grayson obviously had more matches than his counterpart in Uno And Nick Jackson, did he have more matches than Matt Jackson in 2020? I guess so. Now that I think of it.
Nick Jackson. So Nick Jackson is ahead of Matt Jackson because he's lost less. When he was injured, Matt Jackson lost like a multi-man match.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. In the top 10 at the very least, nothing too surprising. Omega being Omega, I think maybe Omega being number one is the most surprising to me, especially above Moxley, above Cody, above Shida.
So that's quite new. He's been up and around there the whole time.
Yes.
Moxley has usually been ahead of him, and every time Kenny Omega kind of catches up, Moxley would jump. Moxley being off for the second time when Renee Young had COVID, Kenny Omega had won a couple matches, and essentially that's why he's at top and Moxley's not.
Yeah, that was going to be my theory, was that Omega was here while Moxley was gone for the COVID stuff at the very beginning, and then also the Renee COVID stuff there. And then above Cody's beginning of his year compared to Omega's beginning of the year, I think was a little bit worse than Omega. So I think that I get, that all makes sense now that you explain it. I mean, nothing too, like looking at this, even looking at the rest of the top five, nothing too, I mean, Allie being up there is weird.
I was going to point that out.
Allie being up there is weird, but also she is, she's been doing a lot of stuff on Dark. And they're really pushing that women's tag division, especially going to the tournament coming up.
So Ali is 4 for 4, and that's 4 tag matches with Brandy. That's all she's done this year in terms of in the ring, but that is enough to put her 16th in the overall charts.
I mean, she's undefeated.
Well, yeah, kind of.
In a way, it's weird. It's weird because it's Ali. She wasn't really a player at all at the end of 2019. I mean, even when the promotion started, they kind of pushed her in the forefront, but she wasn't really a player at all. And now she's kind of, she's been teaming with Brandy the past couple weeks, so she's 4 for 4. You got to give her at the very least that. I mean, there's obviously people missing here like Pac, who you would expect, but obviously 2020 has been put on pause. I'm trying to think of other wrestlers that might be missing from here, but there's not really. Yeah, there's not really.
You'd like to see more women, I'd suggest.
Agreed.
We just spoke about Ali. She's the 3rd highest woman on the list. And the only other 2 that are in the top 25 are the champion and Nyla Rose.
Yeah, and I think that really speaks to at least for 2020, it's a little bit different, but in the full scope of AEW, their women's division being, I don't want to say bad, because a lot of it has been just they got screwed over by just outstanding issues. Whether it be Britt being injured, whether it be COVID happening, whether it be the list goes on and on. But there's so many things that have happened or failed to happen with the women's division, so I can't blame them too much. I mean, someone that probably would have been on here is Britt Baker. I mean, but obviously she's injured, so it's been a whole thing for the women's division. But I would love to see more women, but they're still pushing people, and they're not giving the women enough time when it comes to Dynamite. I know they're giving them a lot of matches on Dark, but even then. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly better on Dark, but I think the women, I mean, we've spoken about this before. I think they've been admirable in trying to spotlight Joshi wrestlers, but then COVID obviously means that they can't travel. Had 2 really bad injuries, but at the end of the day, they're all
Statlander. I forgot.
Yeah. But then at the end of the day, they're struggling to fill a top 5 rankings for the whole women's division, which you can make the excuses, but they also do need to improve there. Moving on to the male singles, I'll rattle off the top 10 again. It is Cody, Moxley, Archer, MJF, Sean Spears, Scorpio Sky, Wardlow, Brian Cage, Kenny Omega, and then Brody Lee. Same kind of idea again, Ryan. I'm going to go first here. I'm kind of highlighting that Sean Spears, Scorpio Sky, and Wardlow
Yeah.
are all in the top 5 kind of non-champions there, yet are not included in the rankings. What do you think of that kind of idea?
It's weird, right? Because if you're someone that just watches Dynamite and doesn't watch Dark, you look at this list and you're like,
Yeah.
why the hell is Spears, Sky, and Wardlow so high?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. But since sort of starting a singles run on Dark, Scorpio Sky has picked up a lot of wins. Wardlow, obviously, he's Wardlow. He's going to pick up wins. Spears, he has a glove that helps him get wins, so that's good for him. But yeah, it's weird to look at, but you have to like contextualize that, like, hey, Dark also greatly matters, and I think that's I think that might be something to say about. I mean, I can say about myself, I've run behind on Dark immensely. You sort of complained about it on Twitter as well, that it's at 12 matches. I love 12 matches for free, but an hour and a half, I'm already busy. I can't just sit down and watch all these matches.
Yeah, I'd rather take like 3 or 4 more interesting matches, like less unsigned. There was a match between Christopher Daniels and Sonny Kiss a few weeks back.
Yeah, that was great.
Great. They were just like, they were obviously just going for it. It was a great match. I really enjoyed it. But like, I'm less interested in Scorpio Sky beating a different jobber every week.
Yeah.
Like, give me Scorpio Sky versus Kip Sabian. That should be Dark.
Yeah, and that's something to say about, they've changed Dark to enhance the number of matches. Obviously they're doing shorter matches, which is, in terms of like business COVID world standing, it's really nice that AEW is using up a lot of independent talent that is currently not making any other money because of how wrestling is in the COVID world today. It's really nice that they're able to take, I don't want to say take advantage because that's not correct, but be able to get those people on and give them wrestling and learn a little bit under their learning tree to enhance their ability and getting more reps in and stuff. That's great. But at the end of the day, I feel like there was a BTE bit about this where it's like they're, in a way, they're kind of padding the numbers a little bit, right? You got Sean Spears beating up a bunch of Serpenticos and Chico Adams and all these people. It's like, who? It's like, who are these people? So I don't know how I feel about it. It's one of those things that, like, when it comes to standings, you're padding the numbers a bit, but like the quality of wins are like, well, these are beating people that are just kind of dudes, I guess.
Yeah, and people will say that like a ranking system is difficult to manage to maintain stories, but like sports leagues do it the whole time, and you know where your team is in the league, and you know where they'll be if they win the match, and that's interesting. It is, and I've got a lot of time for, like, Scorpio Sky is 6th. If he beats Darby Allin on Dynamite, now he's in the top 5. Great. That's, for me, as somebody that likes sports and likes wrestling, I find that really interesting.
I've always liked the idea. You pitched this like way early in the show, but I've always loved the idea of having Dark be like a relegation league.
Yeah. Again, that's football, that's sports. That works too. Or have like,
because then you could have a separate Dark standings, separate Dark league standings that are like, hey, we're all fighting each other and whatnot, and whoever gets high on that list, maybe they have a match on Dynamite, and then on Dynamite since it's separate.
Sorry, I'm being rude. They're essentially doing that already. Just it's not, but they're like, it would be intriguing if Scorpio Sky is on Dynamite for tag, but he's dropped down to Dark to try and make it as a singles guy.
Yeah, and that that's his choice, was to relegate down as a single star. And then when he dominates Dark, he gets to move on, graduate into Dynamite proper, and hope maybe challenge Cody for the TNT belt. And I think that would be a great spot. Put Cody versus Scorpio Sky there. Scorpio Sky has been built up for weeks. He'll be a great person to take TNT Championship off of Cody. Yeah,
and these statistics that you can, the AEW collate. I've been doing it myself to try and create something interesting. Scorpio Sky's won 6 matches in a row. And that's part of that story. He's on a roll. He's won 6 in a row on Dark. Now we're bringing up to Dynamite, and he's going to take on, whomever, Jake Hager, not Jake Hager, but somebody interesting, Jungle Boy, whatever. And then you've got a match with stakes, and
yeah,
it can be a good wrestling match. I don't know. I want more of the sports stuff rather than less. Personally. I'm going to shift us along, Ryan, to the female singles that we've spoken about briefly. We've got Shida, Rose, Swole, Ford, Abaddon. Awesome Kong is still there in 6th place, 1 match, 1 win. Britt Baker, Yuka Sakazaki, Mel, and Chris Statlander being your top 10. Riho coming in 11th, the former champion. The big thing that for me sticks out is Hikaru Shida on 14 points. 15 wins, 1 loss. 2nd place, Nyla Rose on 4 points, 6-2. It's a runaway. This is what one might suggest is the Italian Serie A or the German Bundesliga. Bayern Munich and Juventus are running away with it. I don't know the American equivalent for that. I do apologize.
I shrug my shoulders.
So yeah, it's we've got a dominant kind of individual, kind of far and above ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've talked about it before. COVID had a real impact specifically on the women's division. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember, because it's obviously been a little bit, but I believe that the women that they had available during that block of COVID tapings in Atlanta, Georgia, was Shida, Ford, Baker,
Statlander.
Maybe was Big Swole there?
No, it was just the 4 of them, because they did a tag match, and they may have done a fatal 4-way, but I'm almost certain it was just that 4.
Well, then even then, I mean, obviously, they're building up Hikaru Shida, and that was point of that. A lot of that was to build up Hikaru Shida to face Nyla Rose, and I think that's obviously why her 14 points is a huge number there. But then you look at everything else, and if they had Ford and they had Baker, who then got injured, they had Chris, who also then got injured. Why are their numbers not a little bit higher to me? I think that's weird. And then obviously, the latter half of this graph is all dark talent, who are just losing apparently. Yeah, I mean, this is it's sort of frustrating to me to look at this and just be like, who's the next challenger? I mean, and maybe that's a great reason for them to start this tag tournament, because to basically distract from everything until they get a new challenger, because the new challenger right off the bat would be like, Nyla Rose, she's number 1 in AEW, she's number 1 here, that's gonna be it. But then you got Big Swole in a feud with Britt Baker, so she's distracted. Nyla Rose is a former champion, so I don't know if that makes the most sense. Ford just lost. Abaddon, is Abaddon the next challenger? It's one of those things where it's just I don't really know. Also, why hasn't Asa Kong come back to AEW?
She was away for filming Glow. I don't know when that finishes, or it seems like she's been away for a while though. But perhaps it was a case of filming Glow and then COVID and that. So yeah,
I mean, COVID probably put a halt on filming Glow, obviously.
Yeah,
but could she not come back to? Maybe, I guess she has a contract where she can't go and wrestle during the filming of Glow because she can't come back.
Get injured.
Yeah, I guess injury would be the big issue there. But I mean, let's get some Awesome Kong. Maybe that would be a great challenger. Just have her come back as a one-off for Shida.
Yeah. And she's that she wouldn't be out. You could almost get away with that for a once-off.
Yeah,
or maybe even just a match. I don't know. You might. I don't know. Yeah, maybe not a title shot.
And to be fair, of course, if Awesome Kong, because of COVID reason, cannot come or does not feel comfortable coming, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
I also want to say it's also hilarious that Yuka Sakazaki is at number 8. where I'm sure you've noticed this in the past several weeks, where on the AEW rankings, she was listed for a very long time. I think she just got off the AEW rankings maybe like 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
She hasn't wrestled since before COVID, and she was there the entire time. Like, it's like they thought, it feels like they thought that COVID would be over faster so that they can bring Yuka back as a challenger. Like, I don't know what's happening there.
I mean, even then, like 2 matches, 1-1, even before COVID, it wasn't a good record to be on the rankings.
Exactly.
And even now, like until this week, they'd had Statlander and Baker on the rankings, even though they were both injured quite a while ago. And Baker is still there at number 4. Abaddon having just knocked Statlander off the rankings. So they're
they got a lot of issues.
They're not in a good position in terms of women's rankings. And I have to say, Diamante didn't really. She didn't win a fan out of me. I'm afraid best will in the world. I kind of wanted something to come from her and Evilise having that match, but I thought Evilise was good actually. But it didn't. It just didn't go anywhere in the end.
Yeah.
Going somewhere though, we will move over. Last thing we're going to talk about today, tag team division. We'll kind of go through it quite quickly. To no one's surprise, Hangman Page and Kenny Omega are number 1, 11-11 now. Number 2 is the Best Friends, 17, and so 12-17. Dark Order 3rd, FTR, Young Bucks, Natural Nightmares are still there. Janelle and Kiss, Jurassic Express, SCU, and coming in at number 10 is the Gun Club.
Maybe
1-1. But underneath that, it's zeros, -1, -2, etc. And the Initiative coming in, drop dead bottom, -9.
Who are the Initiative?
And the Initiative is the name for Cutler and Avalon. It was just, the name was just debuted on Dark. Apparently, it's something to do with Dungeons and Dragons. You get the Initiative if you roll something.
Oh yeah, Craig. Fun fact: I'm a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, I've never played, unfortunately.
I had a whole podcast on doing Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Initiative is basically when you're going to when it's like you're entering combat mode. You roll a d20, however high your number is, and plus the modifier is when you can attack in the order of play.
Okay.
If I can best examine that. I love that they're still bottom though. I mean this league standing, not too surprising for me. Best Friends was the only tag team that was available during that Atlanta taping for AEW. So one of the reasons why they got a title shot is because, hey, look, they are shooting up the rankings because they're the only ones having matches. Dark Order just lost. I think to me the better idea and what this really shows to me is who left can ultimately challenge, be an interesting new match for Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. Those people being obviously FTR and the Young Bucks.
They
or
could go
Janelle
back
and Kiss. Let's not forget Janelle and Kiss.
Yeah, only because they haven't. Yeah,
exactly.
It seems looking at these numbers right now that the Kenny Omega Hangman Page title run might have to come to an end. I don't know when you do that. My guess is All Out, which is the next destination. They lose there, and then what you do? Page Omega at Full Gear, something like that. That's
not bad.
Yeah, long-term storytelling is good, but it has been a long time now, and maybe it's time we start thinking about wrapping it up. And then, FTR champions perhaps at All Out, and then Young Bucks Revolution next year, something like that.
Yeah, I think you're right in saying that. I think Page and Omega is starting to run its course. It really feels like All Out is when they will lose. And, great run with the titles to begin with, constant defenses all the time. But yeah, I think, especially with the bubbling waterness of Page and FTR being a sort of thing, if you spin off, that is what ultimately causes their team to lose at All Out, FTR wins or Bucks wins, whoever wins or whoever's challenging, whatever, then you have, you could do a fun match of Page and FTR versus Omega and the Young Bucks. That's a pay-per-view match in my book.
I think a lot of the people that are following the product, that are not within the term of casuals, would point towards this tag team story or these tag team stories as being, the thing.
Yes, this is probably the most prevalent story in the entire of AEW. And ironically enough, I think it's what has been least hurt by COVID. Obviously we already spoke about the women's division, even the men's division. Moxley was gone for so long, and then he was gone again because of his wife. Where here, Omega was still at the Atlanta tapings. Then we're building up the best friends. Makes sense there. And then as soon as we get out and we get Paige back, pretty much weekly title matches coming out of them. I think it makes sense. Who comes out after that? I think you're right. I think it could be FTR winning it All Out, then maybe spinning off into something at Revolution, maybe Paige versus Omega, maybe it's that 6-man, and then eventually Young Bucks FTR. I think makes sense. I think it's a good idea to put the titles on FTR on the next pay-per-view.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that takes us to the end of the show, Ryan, unless there's anything else you want to add or look at.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting this one. I think you did a good job, Craig. I was on the other side of the table for this one. So it's weird. We're flipping things up, like you said, flipping things on its head to sort of change up the format of the show every once in a while without changing it too much. I think it worked. I liked it a lot. Things for me to plug, I guess. You can always follow me on Twitter at HitTheBooksPod, or on my private thing, which is at Ryan Neitzey. But it's not private. You can just follow it. I don't tweet often, so you can go there if you want. So at HitTheBooksPod, of course, you can go there. We have all stuff. I talk about wrestling all the time, and really dive in and complain about people being incorrect about WWE's ability to make stars, which is a fight I got into earlier this week. What else? And of course, subscribe to this podcast channel, whether it be YouTube, whether it be the podcast feed itself. Subscribe. We also got the other show on here that I do with Mikey, who was the guest last week, called Hit the Books. Basically, the show is kind of like GM mode, but more realistic stakes and a more realistic world. We're not bringing in the Young Bucks. We're not bringing in FTR. If when the COVID firings happen, if someone got fired, they were cut from our roster. We're trying to keep it as realistic as what's happening. It's basically GM mode. So basically every single week I will present my version of Monday Night Raw. Mikey will present his version of Friday Night SmackDown, and we'll basically show them to each other. And whoever has the better card gets voted on by the listeners on Twitter. And, we then roll a thing afterwards, and the loser could have, like we said, real stakes. The loser could basically have to change their entire card right on the spot. They have to maybe cut a match. I might, if Mikey's the loser, I could win a NXT call up. If Mikey's the loser, I could injure one of his wrestlers for 6 months. Realistic things happen. We have a wellness policy violation or whatever. So go check out that show. I think we're doing a great job. We've been basically writing, actually, this upcoming show, now I think about it, Craig, is our 2-year anniversary for doing Hit the Books. So we've been doing it for quite a while, and we got a whole backlog which you can check out at htbpod.com. That'll read up on our archive. But it's been doing it for a long time, and I think we've sort of proven that idea of hey, if you get people that watch wrestling and understand how wrestling works, they can write good stuff. And I feel like Mikey and I write good stuff. So go check that out if you're interested.
Perfect. So, again, please check out prowrestlingmusings.com for all the numbers, et cetera, et cetera. Some really good articles from people coming on there. We've got Chester with some kind of maybe more of the detailed rating stuff that I've ever seen. What else do we have? Dan is going to be writing about Warhorse and Cody this week. And there should be another set of AEW statistically statistically inspired ratings from Griff as well.
Yeah.
So that's all this week from Wrestling with Statistics. For Ryan and myself, thank you very much for listening.
Bye.